Welcome. So today is a beautiful day. I can't believe it. In my area, the average temperature should be at least freezing. Freezing should be the high. But for some reason, it's beautiful. And everything has melted. And I'm kind of tiptoeing around. But here I was inspired to explore one of my favorite topics, a World's Fair. And I thought we'd focus on the United States. And we would also focus on the first World's Fair in the United States, which was in Philadelphia, Pennsylvania. Has the same characteristics as all the other World's Fairs. It was held for 6 months, this one having about 200 buildings, no shortage. And the year is 1876. This is the Centennial Expo, marking 100 years of good old America. What better way to celebrate 100 fresh American years? So they had a fair. And starting off, I want to be fair and neutral and approach this with an innocent spirit, somewhat naive, and see if any of this might make sense. As I've said in the past, I love to be wrong. Wouldn't it be nice to be wrong? And everything was actually just fine and dandy. So let's see what they have to say. In 1876, the first official World's Fair was to be held in the United States. In 1876, officially named the International Exhibition of Arts, Manufactures, it was held in Fairmount Park, a large park, the largest in Philly. 2 sections totaling 2,000 acres? That can't be right. Maybe just 2. And it's along a river, just like many of the buildings of the old world, seeming to function in cahoots with the river and waterways. And it was said to be held on the fairgrounds designed by Herman Schwartzman. Nearly 10 million visitors attended the expo, and 37 countries participated in it. Mind you, this is 1876, and 37 countries and 10 million world participants, we are told, would partake in this fair, traveling by boat and horse and wagon. So this is very interesting. Even before this 1876 fair, we're told there was a fair called the Great Sanitary Fair. This sounds very enticing. How appealing. Honey, let's go to the sanitary fair. Okay. This fair, we're told, was the model for this great Centennial World's Fair that was held about 12 years later. We're told the sanitary fair was actually to raise money for medicine and bandages during the American Civil War. There we go. It raised $1 million for bandages. I mean, what were they doing? We're told they were sawing people's legs off in the Civil War. Why did they need $1 million? How exotic could these bandages have been? And what a strange thing. Who has ever heard of some crazy sanitary fair that was held in 1864? Here we go. Are you kidding me? We needed to build all this so that we could buy bandages? We needed to spend $20 million to raise $1 million? Unbelievable. Will you just look at this city in 1864? 1864. What have the people been doing in America for the last 100 years? From my perspective, nothing needed to be done. How many of these towers and spires are still standing? And what of this? Once again, you need to tell me you need to have a fair to raise money for bandages and you have a building like this. Again, this building alone is a $20 million building, requiring at least 20 years to construct. But no, we needed to build all this to raise $1 million so that we could saw people's legs off and bandage them. Look at this. Look at these people. What war? Who is fighting a war? Look at this place. We're told the President of the United States in this time period was born in a log cabin the size of an outhouse. And yet this is our city, looking like any ancient city in Europe. And this isn't even the fair. We're off topic. This is the precursor to the World's Fair that we're about to look at, 10 years later, in which they would build 200 buildings. First of all, this is fine. This is fine for a World's Fair, this sanitary fair. This is fine for a fair today. Actually nicer. But I digress. The idea for this first World's Fair in America is given credit to a John Campbell, a professor of mathematics, natural philosophy, astronomy, graduating from this Wabash College in Indiana. The idea, okay, right off the get-go, this crazy idea, just coming from this guy. He suggested to the mayor at the time that there should be a United States centennial to celebrate the first 100 years. Naysayers argued that the project would not be able to find funding. It seems like they did all right with their sanitary fair. I don't know what the skepticism is. Other nations might not attend, they continued, and domestic exhibits would compare poorly to foreign ones. And pretty soon they found some supporters, the Philly Council, the Franklin Institute, and then they asked Congress for support, and the bill passed. Congress creates a board of finance to help raise money. They appoint John Welsh, this guy, a merchant and minister, to England, and he had raised money for the Great Sanitary Fair in 1864. So he was the perfect candidate. Congress had to seek this man out, a true expert, and they set up stocks. I mean, this is just crazy, involving Congress and setting up boards. 10 million in stock, $10 a share. The board sold almost $2 million worth, equal to 38 million today worth of shares by 1873. Okay, so we have 3 years to go. They just made a couple million bucks. Philly contributed 1.5 million, and Pennsylvania gave 1 million. And then Congress appropriated another 1.5 million. So everyone's just throwing down now. All skepticism and frugality thrown out the window in this early time period. Just having money right around the time of the Civil War to appropriate millions on a World's Fair that they're not even sure if anyone will show up to. And I beg to ask, even as wonderful as any fair that they create would be, where would you house the people? Without lodging, this fair is worthless. If you're traveling across the world, this isn't just a weekend trip. Let's say you traveled from anywhere in the world, managed to arrive at this fair. You're into this trip at least 2 weeks. And I would say that's generous. I think with boat travel and horse and wagon travel, you're into this trip a month just to attend the fair for 3 or 4 days. You have to get lodging and feed for your horses, and it looks like they had no problem raising a bunch of money. Then the Fairmount Park Commission set aside 450 acres for the expo. Unbelievable. I mean, 450 acres is absolutely insane. They would not have needed more than 20 acres to have a killer fair. But 450 acres? What? It's not like these fairgoers are cattle and they need to graze. Again, we're talking about horse and wagon. You want to keep everything nice and compact. Who wants to walk around 450 acres? And here we go. To accommodate out-of-town visitors, temporary hotels were constructed temporary hotels. And the Pennsylvania Railroad ran special trains into the fair. Again, 1873. Railroad jumps on board. This is temporary, and they're going to lay tracks, permanent railroad tracks, to the temporary fair. Yes. And a small hospital was built on the grounds. Philly passed an ordinance that authorized the mayor to appoint 500 men as guards for the expo. Now that's kind of weird. It'd be like going to Disneyland and having 500 guards all around it. Among soldiers, local men were hired. Guards were required to live on site and were housed at 6 police stations strategically located throughout the expo. Why so many police stations and so many guards? Now again, you probably know what I want to say from my past videos and how I really feel about all this. But again, I'm approaching this innocently and naively. Structures. More than 200 buildings were constructed within the expo grounds, which were surrounded by a fence nearly 3 miles long. There were 5 main buildings in the expo. The main exhibition building, memorial hall, machinery hall, agricultural hall, and horticultural hall. Apart from these buildings, there were separate buildings for state, federal, foreign, corporate, and public comfort buildings. The Centennial Commission sponsored a design competition. Again, the same narrative as usual. First round had to have details of construction, cost, and time prepared for the runoff on September of 1873. 10 designs were submitted, and the winners were chosen. It was determined that none of them allowed enough time for construction and limited finances. The architecture of the exhibition mainly consisted of 2 types of buildings: traditional masonry monuments and buildings with a structural framework of iron and steel. So, not being told about the whole temporary thing, really pushing these builders. Having such a short deadline to build their 200 buildings. They only have 3 years to build these 200 buildings. And it consisted in the end of masonry, iron, and steel. The main exhibition building, designed by engineer Joseph Wilson and architect Henry Petit, a temporary structure, we're told. The main building was the largest building in the world, enclosing 21 acres. 21 acres. I was just saying 20 acres would be perfectly adequate to hold a fair. And here we're told they built this temporary building that is 21 acres large. How can I explain 21 acres? I think maybe a football stadium, a large one. And let's just look at it. Okay, here we go. 21 acre building here. 21 acres. And you can see, this is the short side. This is the absolutely short side of this long rectangle. Here we go. Just let's zoom in a little. Look at that. It almost continues for what seems like a mile. This flag here, an arch, seems to be the halfway point. And this, we are told, is temporary. And this is only one of 200 buildings. Why would you even build one more? How could you even build this one in 3 years, let alone 199 more? You have to landscape, lay railroad tracks, grade the roads. And what would I think now if I was truly innocent and naive? Could I just keep reading? Could I just dismiss this while looking at these primitive people? Could I accept any more? And mind you, this was not even the world's largest fair. This one is actually pretty small, and the building's less grand than other world's fairs, but this is 1876. Again, our president is born somewhere around here in a log cabin, and somehow this is thrown up in a few years for a temporary fair? And here's a look at the interior. And this is an actual photograph, a very early photograph, 1876, in this temporary 20-acre building. And there's nothing temporary about this. This is steel. These are load-bearing columns, and it actually looks like it has a concrete floor. Can you imagine flooring 20 interior acres with anything? So again, we see here a temporary structure, but then we're told it was constructed using prefabricated parts, wood and iron frame, resting on a substructure of 672 stone piers. Wrought iron roof trusses were supported by the columns of the superstructure. So again, let's go back to the interior. We are told these are stone columns. They just told us stone columns and iron roof. So somebody please tell me what is temporary about stone columns and an iron structure. 672 stone piers. The building took a mere 18 months to complete and cost $1.5 million bucks. Unbelievable. Just chocked full of inconsistencies. Temporary, yet stone and iron. Do we go on? Here they tell us the flooring of the building was made of wooden planks that rested directly on the ground. 20 acres of wooden planks. 20 acres of flooring. And this looks unbelievable. If it is wood, not a seam, just laying on dirt. 20 acres, we're talking about a forest's worth just on the floor, if this is the case. And it's just over the top. It's just heavy and way over the top. Stained glass, skylights, fountains that provided cooling, the largest everything for its time. And mind you, this is the first. It's a fair. It's not a castle, although it is. What are you gonna do in here? Again, I stress, you need some concessions, some amusements. What are you gonna do? This guy's gonna push this lady around. Right now she just needs to use the restroom. Where could the restroom be here? Excuse me, sir. Sir? Again, I digress. Let's look at the Horticultural Hall. Built in 1 year, demolished in 1954. Here she is. Now this wasn't even the same building. This is just another building. Remember, 200 buildings. We've just seen 2. And all this was built in 18 months and demolished? Who would demolish this? And who would build this? And it looks like the Matrix is playing across the street. And let's imagine a Matrix scenario here. Again, we're told of a log cabin building people settling the Americas, and we are the following generation of this hard-working, struggling people. And today, while playing the role of the innocent and naive prick, I stumble across this 1876 temporary Philadelphia Fair. And this isn't even the main building. This is just this stupid horticultural hall. And let me just say, if I was building a city and I wanted to feed my people, the first thing I would erect is a greenhouse this size. But back to the fair. The Machinery Hall, again designed by a Joseph Wilson and Henry Petit. Machinery Hall was the second largest structure at the expo, located west of the main building, the 20-acre building, with a superstructure made of wood and glass resting on a foundation of massive masonry. So there we go, massive masonry, glass, and this is just one of 200 buildings of this nature, most which would be torn down with the exception of 4 or 5 of them. And what was the purpose of this machinery hall that took 6 months to construct, occupying 500,000 square feet? The machinery hall was to showcase state-of-the-art industrial technology that was being produced at the time. One of the major displays or attractions was the Centennial steam engine, as we can see here, that ran power to all machinery in the building as well as other parts of the World's Fair. So this is pre-power, or at least what we would call conventional power, and yet they were powering this whole fair with this steam engine. It was 45 feet tall, this thing that we're looking at, and weighed 650 tons and had 1 mile of overhead belts connecting to the machinery in the building. Unbelievable. I mean, again, this is a 6-month fair in 1876, horse and buggy, and we have a 650-ton, 45-foot tall engine? How is anyone moving any of these parts with a horse? But I completely digress once again. Let's have a look at the machinery hall. Why don't we have a better picture? Again, not even the large building, just a side building. And we can note how amused these visitors seem, even in this rendering, seeming absolutely bored. Honey, why did we come here? I'm not sure, dear. And next we arrive to my favorite, the Memorial Hall. In present times, this is called the Please Touch Museum, and we've looked at it before. The building is constructed of brick, glass, iron, and granite. It was the largest hall in the country with a 1.5-acre footprint, a 150-foot dome, and inspired by the Reichstag building in Berlin, as seen here. Yeah, more than just inspired. And the Memorial Hall should be enough. We just looked at 3 massive buildings, and then this, and nothing temporary about this. Just this one building, they would have blown through their budget and time frame of 18 months. Just this building. And I never even bothered looking at this World's Fair. This building is all it took for me to realize that the narrative was absolutely ridiculous. This and none of these 200 buildings were built for this 6-month fair. If it's not clear by now, after all these years, it may never be clear. How can anybody swallow this narrative? Brick, glass, and iron, 1876? This building is timeless. This isn't the kind of building you build in a few months, or a year, or even 10 years. We are told this building has been sitting here since 1876, and this building could sit here for another 1,000 years and probably need very little maintenance. And I think this video is getting a little long. Let's just have a look at a few other buildings. Here is the Women's Pavilion. This is the unbuilt Centennial Tower, a 1,000-foot tall tower conceived for the fair, but we're told it was never built. And what about everything else? No explanation? Don't mind the pyramids. And here the interior of the Horticultural Hall, complete with chandeliers and a very Moorish architectural feel. Plumbed fountains. Again, the president is born a couple states away in a small shanty-like log cabin. Not far away to the south, they were sawing people's limbs off and fighting each other with cannonballs and muskets. Here is their monorail. Of course, why wouldn't we have a monorail? This budget just seems to stretch on forever. May as well have a monorail, says Mr. Controller here. Here we can see the Statue of Liberty's arm on display and the largest knife and fork in the world. Remember in my last video I was talking about how everything 100 years ago was the largest everything, and was this just found in the basement of one of these 20-acre buildings. Well, I hope that wasn't too boring. I thank you for joining me this week. Do have a blessed day. and I love you all.